when it comes to Materialists, if you were expecting it to be Celine Song's next past lives, set aside those expectations. For what it does instead is present a good idea for a potential TV show, just unfortunately with the wrong cast. So to summarize the movie, after a breakup with a 37-year-old aspiring actor ex-John, Lucy has remained single and focused on being a matchmaker. Thus far, she's pretty good at it, seemingly double any of her peers at having 9 people get into the altar, but it's continually odd thing for both her clients and maybe even viewers to a point that someone so adept in terms of pairing people up is unable to get herself into a relationship. But as slowly but surely revealed, Lucy is somebody who wants a certain type of life. So when a man named Harry enters her life, he's rich, brother to someone that Lucy paired, so he's not, his family anyway is not completely unfamiliar. And with him taking a keen interest in her, it seems like a good match. However, as much as Lucy wants a rich man, someone who has good taste in everything, we see the difference between having checked all the boxes off to compatibility, intimacy, chemistry, stuff like that. And as John comes back into Lucy's life, you see a love triangle form between everything that Lucy would want on paper versus everything that actually makes Lucy feel alive in ways that can't be bought with money. So get into the view section. The best thing when it comes to, actually one of the best things when it comes to Materialists is that it's very much on love versus logic. And we see that in a multitude of ways. We see that in terms of the love triangle that's at the center of the film between John and Harry and Lucy's decision between the two men. And I would even say in many ways, it also kind of mirrors what you see and what we'll talk about in The Tree Fell in the Woods in terms of loving qualities of a person versus loving that person themselves. And it's very interesting to see, especially in terms of how dating is in modern age, and if my love, marriage, romance, how much it kind of has to shift away or two, depending on the person, whether you love this person and willing to do anything for them, or if it has to be a logical decision based off of you wanting to live in a certain area, you want some finance, and technically, yes, these issues, topics, whatever, has been around forever. But I think now with the two main genders being equal a bit more economically, now it's a really much more pertinent issue. And as we see for Lucy, in many ways, yes, you can still kind of expose your partner or try to get them into things you like, but there's certain things that you just want as a person to not have to push for, not kind of be in this mindset of this person is doing it just because I like it, but you want them to be into it as well. But at the same time, even if you have somebody that's into it, money wise and everything, the mind could be happy, but then if the heart's not into it, maybe even the loins in some cases, then it's still not going to be that perfection you're looking for. And watching this complication play out makes you definitely appreciate Lucy more than perhaps you should in some cases. Which leads to the next highlight, and that's just that, as we hinted on to earlier, this feels like it would make an excellent scripted show. And I know there are unscripted versions of this, like I believe there's Millionaire Matchmaking, there's surely other shows out there, but one of the things that really make Materialists work is Lucy's job at a door and watching all the B storylines regarding who Lucy's trying to hook up, especially when it comes to one of her favorites whose name, what is that woman's name? Sophie. Sophie is Lucy's favorite client, but also struggles with the most. And it's just nice to see characters like Sophie get featured. And granted, we'll talk a little bit more about the complications with that storyline, but again, it's one of those situations where as much as you can appreciate what Lucy's going through, what it means thematically, it's these supporting characters who don't really have big roles that really kind of stay with you rather than the big name superstars. Which leads to the next highlight, and that's just it balances out the unrealistic expectations of both men when it comes to dating and also women. And it could be easy to imagine that this film could feel very lopsided in terms of it's just going to show a bunch of men who want somebody who younger than them, probably in their 20s, while they're 40 something year olds, well established, talk about they want to have better conversations and yet choosing 20-year olds, which is literally one of the men in the trailer. But it balances things out by also presenting it that women want somebody with a full head of hair, or over 6 feet, and a laundry list that's so long that it looks like it's for a job posting, specifically for like an executive level position. And I should also add, it's not just in the depiction of it, but Lucy also presents how difficult it is to pair people like this. Never mind how much it makes the success of her job harder. Because, yes, in terms of finding young women for these older men, it's possible, but at the same time, will that relationship last once they get into the Leonardo DiCaprio type feelings? It was like, you hit expiration date, I need my next model. And then when it comes to the woman, it's like, having a man 6 feet, full head of hair, makes a certain amount of money, likes this, that, and the third. With each little box you add on to this list, you make it harder and harder to find somebody. And it's a wonderful thing again that even though it's a romance movie, the lead is a woman, there is a sense that it's not trying to necessarily bag on men or women specifically, but just dating in general and how people build up this need for perfection to the point that actually finding a human being that could actually be compatible with them, they make it too hard to actually exist, which leads into our on the fence portion. And this is when we have to bring Sophie back into the storyline. I mean, into the review. And what made Sophie a bit of a complicated storyline is that, on one hand, with Sophie, we get to see Lucy fail at something regarding her job, and it felt like a necessary part of her journey. But at the same time, as much as showing us that Lucy isn't perfect was necessary, I feel like the way they handled Sophie's storyline was unfortunate, for lack of a better sentence, because the way Sophie's handled her situation is that she got hooked up with a guy, checked off all the boxes, but things went terrible on the date, and so came the need for law enforcement to get involved. And on top of the issue of not only this law enforcement issue, there is the fact that Lucy set them up. She feels guilty, makes a question if she should still be a matchmaker. And unfortunately, because Sophie is a supporting character and not played by a big name star like Chris Evans, Dakota Johnson, or Pedro Pascal, her storyline doesn't get taken to the point where you can see the full range of, seeing the date, what happened, kind of getting to process how she feels, and even, kind of a hesitation of getting back out there again, never mind getting out there again through a dating service like Adore. And it frustrates me because, again, the way that Materials is set up is it makes you so invested in it and Lucy's clients that you lose interest in what's going on in Lucy's actual personal life. So with the way that Sophie is handled, it just pushes the need to want more, and then to add on to it, Sophie is made into that type of character who you can easily get into. And granted, Sophie is not, the every woman type of person, because one, she could afford, I believe, for months, if not maybe more than a year, a company like Adore, and matchmakers are not cheap. So you add that in, the fact that Sophie is a lawyer, she can afford to live alone in New York City. She's definitely not the average woman by any means, but as Lucy describes her, she's a nice girl, no particular flaws, no particular assets. I mean, besides having a good job and living alone, but she's not like the tomboy who's has girl next door appeal or something like that. And there's something about that doesn't feel like Hollywood generic, but like an actual sort of normal person, that it makes it again so that as much as it's going on in Lucy's life, you don't care because it feels so geared toward some type of Hollywood nonsense that it really makes you want to hone in on this supporting character who unfortunately doesn't get her due, even with her getting to have somewhat of a comeback toward the end of the film. Which leads to the last on the fence topic, and that's just the fact that this film starts off in the most terrible way by featuring cavemen and I guess what's supposed to be the start of one of the first courtships, if not marriages, in human history. And I get in many ways. To go from Past Lives, which is very much an indie movie, artsy type, to now when Materialists was definitely a bit more mainstream. Maybe this was Celine Song's way of rebelling a little bit, still showing that she has her artsy credentials. But to me, walking into the theater and watching these cavemen fall in love, whatever, it made me think I was in the wrong movie theater, and I was in a movie theater that does not play indie movies. So, needless to say, this is definitely one of those films where you're probably gonna have to give it some time to get started. And if you're someone who's impatient, might be a problem for you. But overall, Materialist is strong on its message and themes to the point of wanting to see more. However, when it comes to the lead characters, their dramas, their stories, honestly, they're just means for something far more interesting. And I submit, as much as we enjoy each individual actor, especially their past work, they didn't bring anything special to these roles that they had for Materialists. And at times, characters like Sophie pushed the idea that this should have been more about them, and it really makes you hope that whether it's Celine Song or somebody else, someone takes inspiration from this and perhaps makes a scripted series.